Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf, a life and leadership podcast where we live out loud the pages of the books that are on our shelves, with your host, Denise Russo and Sam Powell.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. This is our life and leadership podcast where we're living out loud the pages of the books that are on our bookshelves. My name's Denise Russo. I'm here today with my friend and co-host, Sam Powell. We're going through a book together called The Joy at Work by Marie Kondo. And I'm curious, Sam, first of all, how you're doing. And second of all, how has it been for you reading this book so far?
This is good. I really like this book because this is very practical. Like in the last book, it was a lot of data, a lot of information, and it was a little bit harder to kind of live out loud because you really had to be, purposeful about it. This one feels, I think, a little more grabbable because it's like, okay, I can pick a day and do the thing. And honestly, like if I was giving somebody a recommendation on this book, now that we're over halfway through it, or about halfway through it, I would tell somebody to read a chapter, stop, go do the chapter in real life, and then start the next chapter. Like, I think that would be really doable. And like, you don't need to be reading this like all at once to get the point. Like, it's broken up really nicely and really practically to where if you go back a couple of episodes, if you read that chapter about tidying your workspace and then you went and did it, you could easily move on to like tidying your digital life. And then, today we're talking about tidying time. And I think you could really practically live this one out loud, chapter by chapter, and not need to move forward until you just complete the task. And so this one's, I love this book for that reason of like, I could go make big changes in my work life to do this. This one I think is going to be one that stays on my shelf and gets recommended a lot to clients and to people that I know and anybody who feels like, oh, my life at work feels real cluttered and feels just like messy, and be like, you know what book you should probably pick up? Like, let's make it an exercise. Let's make it a thing you do.
One of the things I love about the way you just described that is based on last week's chapter about cleaning up the clutter of your bookshelves. Because when I look at the books that I have, there's a lot here really that I probably never will read again. But there's a couple books that I'm looking straight at that I want to read again, or I want to use as like living guides. Like the Coach Wooden book
Yeah.
for me is one that I think I probably, thanks to Pat Williams for writing that, will not want to get rid of. I think I want to read maybe even some other books about Coach Wooden by other authors to see how aligned they are. But when I'm looking at the shelf, that one stands out. I would imagine for you, Atomic Habits is a big standout.
Definitely.
And I think that even I don't know, I have to say that we've been really so lucky or blessed to pick the books that we've picked over the last 3-ish years, because each one of those are books that maybe it's just because we did what you're talking about doing, where we
Yeah.
didn't just crack the spine, read the words for the sake of words, but we did something about it that
Yeah.
makes a difference. And so for me, I'm glad you're going to keep this one of her books on the shelves, because her other book is the big one that's on my shelf, which is about the life-changing magic of tidying up, primarily focused on your house. And the way that I look at that is that we all often talk about how there's no such thing as work-life balance. You have a life, work is part of it. And if you can clean up your mental mess and your physical mess in your house and in your physical body, and then you can focus on what's going on at work, how much better would it be to not like long for Fridays and dread Mondays?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that this can really help in that space, right? Is it going to fix every single problem you have at work? No, but will it give you all the space to deal with it? Yep. And this chapter, especially, right? This one is tidying time. And as soon as I read the title, I was like, oh, Denise is gonna love this one. This is Denise's one of your topics. And it's really it starts out with this great story about basically someone who says yes to everything. And then Marie herself inserts a story, because this chapter is written by Scott, but like Marie herself inserts a story in the middle of it that talks about how right after the life-changing magic of tidying up really blew up, and she was saying yes to every single, news outlet that wanted to have her, all the different things. Because she was like, oh, I can share my message, this will be great, and it burned her out. And so this starts with this concept of we say yes to a lot of things for a lot of reasons, but we say yes to the wrong things often. And like reading this story about the woman in the book who the story is about, her name is Christine, like reading Christine's story, I'm like, oh girl, I have been there and I still do it all the time, right? We say yes to things that we shouldn't, little tiny things, really big things. And when I think about it in the context of work, like I do this, I run my own business, I am my own boss, and still say yes to things I shouldn't. Not that other people necessarily throw at me sometimes, every once in a while, but like things that I throw at myself or like just don't manage well myself. And it sucks up so much of really what I should and want to be working on.
A few years ago, you and I were at the same company, and it was a team I was on that was not when I was still on a team with you, but it was this exercise that we decided to do that was basically a cost savings exercise, like I think a lot of teams have to go through. And if you're a manager listening to this episode, maybe this is even something you can try. And what we did was we took an inventory of 1 week, all the meetings that the team was invited to or expected to be a part of for that 1 week. And then what we looked at was what is the cost per hour of the people that were invited to those meetings that week. And
Mhm.
then at the end of the week, we sort of did this poll, if you will, about how many of those meetings could have just been an email, or that you attended a meeting that had
Yeah.
nothing to do with you, or maybe it had
Mhm.
everything to do with you, but at the end of the meeting, you had no idea if there was an action or what was going to happen next. And it
Mhm.
ended up being an incredible waste of your time. Or let's
Yeah.
even call it a spend of your time. Maybe there was something useful in it, but it was not a good investment of your time. And what we found in doing that exercise is that it kind of inspired us and the team to go deeper and to look at then a month, look at a quarter, look at a year, and try to estimate what the cost of loss to the business was by non productive meetings, inviting people to meetings that didn't need to be there, or having meetings that could have been a communication piece instead of a meeting. And Sam, it was not just in the thousands of dollars. You were talking in the multi millions of
Yeah.
dollars of loss of productivity at work.
Yeah. And it's real. And it's funny that like because I've done tasks like that too. I've looked at, I've done time, evaluations and all that sort of stuff and done calculations that are similar. And like, it's funny that that still doesn't make us do the right thing, right? It still doesn't make businesses prioritize, not wasting it and, not wasting our time with, emails that should have been a meeting or just, back and forth exchanges of stuff that just doesn't really mean, but it's real. Like it is a real, real loss. And the exercise that Scott walks us through in this chapter is similar to like what you just said, right? It is doing that like time inventory in a way, but it starts first, the coach in me loves because this is where I start all coaching engagements. Is like, what's our vision here, right? Like, what do you want your day at work to really look like, right? Like, what is the ideal work life that you have? And starting there, then going out and like finding all the activities and they exported her calendar and all that sort of stuff. And the story about this woman, right? She was able to do all of this, kind of assess, figure out what she wanted to say yes to in reality. And by the end of it, right, what she looks at now is like, and I highlighted this of like, if my collective work doesn't trend towards joy, that's a sign I need to make a change. And so like that's really what this exercise of this chapter is having you do and having you look at. And we can look at like some of the specifics here in a second, but it's this like, what do I want this to look like? What is this vision? And then taking a real look in the mirror, making the changes you need to make, but then keeping this idea and this thought process that if collectively my work isn't trending me towards joy, and you and I spent so much time on happiness versus joy versus all, like we had a whole years of conversation on that topic, but like joy is we've talked about through the whole book, but like thinking about, is my time at work trending towards joy, right? That level of happiness, that level of contentment, that level of like, yes, okay, I'm excited to be here. Like, all right. Like that's kind of I don't know, to me, like a really amazing idea. And I think about like, what would that look like for people? I think about this with my coaching clients. Like people who are talking to me aren't sitting in joy in their career. And it's like, man, if we could go grab that, that's the life-changing moment for them, right? That's the life-changing magic that we could be, pun intended here, of like what you could accomplish by looking at your time and by taking control of your time, which is another topic. Like you got a whole book you're working on in that space.
I have a whole book I'm working on about how time matters, and I hope that I really can get that prioritized to be finished because it's sort of like not just me living it out loud. It's literally I'm the case study about it. And I would say that one of the things that people struggle with is other people mandating what's on your calendar. And so I've written now, I can't even remember, Sam, how many articles for Forbes about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to reclaim your time, whether it is at work or at home, but this book is about the joy at work, then I want to really encourage you to go Google my name in Forbes and go look at articles about something called Ikigai, Ikigai. It's a Japanese concept. It doesn't exactly have an English translation, but it's about finding the center of your purpose, or let's call it in this case, finding joy at work. And there are these pillars that hold up that joy. And if any of those pillars are out of balance, then your joy gets shaken, if you will. So Marie Kondo talks about how the psychology behind this is that there are things that shake your joy, which is working too hard for the wrong results, prioritizing urgent tasks over important ones, and multitasking. But I think there's something personally that's even more important than that. I think that's like the subcategory.
Mm-hmm.
At the foundation, this is not a hard exercise. It's not a not a difficult exercise. Well, let's figure out how to phrase it the right way. It is hard to get the answers to this exercise, but it's not a hard exercise to actually do.
It's
So
simple. It's
simple,
simple,
not
but it's
easy.
not easy.
Yeah, that was a much better way to say it. The gist of it is this, and I think we even did this in our retreat with our participants that came on a multi-day retreat. And if you're listening and you want to have to be a part of a retreat, maybe solo, or maybe you have a group of people that you have as friends that you want to go through a retreat, or maybe you are a people leader and you want your team to go through a retreat. We offer that multi-day retreats, and they are holistic retreats about your life and leadership development. And so in this exercise, it's not difficult if you take a box or a piece of paper and put it into like 4 squares. And your joy is at the center or the crossroads of those lines, horizontal and vertical. And the first box is identifying what are you good at? Because if you're going to spend time at work doing things you're not good at, then how much extra time are you spending on those things? And is it really worth the payoff if you get better at those things? Like, is it really aligned with your career trajectory to get better at the things that you are either not good at or that you're good at, but you are not great at? And what does that mean for your job? That's the first square. The second square is about you even like what you're doing. And so I'm going to pass this one to you to talk about, since a lot of your clients are sitting in this space of maybe they're good at something, but they don't like it, and what that does to your time and your mind. So what about this square about, or do you like what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's the question that we feel before we ever consciously get around to asking ourselves. It's that moment of like, it's those moments throughout your day, your work, where you like, you feel that rub. It's like, just like it's the moment. Like, I really have to do this? Do I really have to spend time with it? Like, it's like, yeah, I could do this with my eyes closed, but like, ugh, I just don't want to, right? It's that feeling over and over and over again. And like, we can all, I think, empathize with that, where it's like, I've built all these skills, spent all this time, all of this investment in my life to build this experience in this one area, but like, do I even like this?
Mhm.
And a lot of times the answer is like a mixed yes and no. There's parts of it I really like, and there's parts that I don't. And so that's such an important question. And because I work with people mid-career, right? I feel like, right, we like midlife crisis is a thing for a reason, right? We get to a point where we gain so much experience in our life, and we kind of come like what I like to say is like mid-career is like an awakening, right? You come to this point where you're like, is this really what I want to spend the next 20 years doing? Is this really like, is this trajectory right? Like, what got me here isn't what will get me there, right?
Yeah.
As far as, happiness, satisfaction, joy in my career. And so it comes down to this question of like, do I even want this, right? Is this really what I want? And that's a hard and scary question to face for a lot of people. It doesn't have to be, right? Come get a coach, go have friends, like have a chat with somebody, and it can become one of the best conversations that you ever really have with yourself because it then unlocks and helps you admit, okay, like let's go pursue something different. Let's go pursue, and that doesn't mean a huge career change. It could be stay where you are, but change maybe how you're managing your time, maybe how you're showing up in certain different ways.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And when you look at these two squares that we just said, there's a reason they're not the same square because you could be good at something and not like it. And there's a lot of emotional burden that comes with that, and it strips your
Yeah.
time away because you might be really good and people keep giving you those things to do because you're good at it, but you
Yeah.
don't get joy at all from it. That was me years ago. I started losing joy working in one industry that I loved for a long time, but my joy was no longer in the things I was doing, and I had to leave. And it was like a very difficult grief held thing because I was
Yeah.
leaving my comfort zone. Flip it the other way around is you could really like what you're doing. Like right now, I'm working on a project that I actually really, really like, but I'm not good at it yet because it's something new. And so I'm investing all this extra time to make sure I'm learning it and networking with the right people and getting into the understanding of what is it that I don't know that I need to know. And so if you like something but you're not good at it, the emotions are different.
Right. Yeah, they are. And the rub feels different, right? The
Mhm.
stress, the feelings that go along with it feel very different. And it's really important to know that, right? And when he talks about like you said, I feel like those are kind of the bigger questions, but the common traps that people fall into that they're calling out in this chapter are that like um working too hard for the wrong results, which is a lot of this part of it, prioritizing urgent tasks over important ones and the multitasking. And I think we've all really like felt felt these traps and have been in that. And like there's this like he has this question, especially in this first one, this he calls it over earning by working too hard for the wrong results. And he says
Mhm.
a lot of what your effort goes into a lot of what if a lot of your effort goes into waste because you're working towards goals you don't really value, right? It comes into that kind of that second category of like I'm working really hard at something that like ultimately doesn't move the lever, doesn't cause, value added activities for me at the end of the day. I know when I started the Maxwell program, one of the things that's part of that is like they've got a business building course for people who
Mhm.
are, new in that space. And the big question, like the big thing in that is they talk about like you need to be focusing on revenue generating activities. Like if you're building a business, you're trying to build revenue. And it's like, they give you this list of things. It's like, these are revenue generating activities. You going updating your LinkedIn profile for the 900th time is not, right? Like, go do that eventually or hire somebody to do that eventually. But like, focus in on the things that move the lever, that really add value to the big goal that you have, right? That intersect what you're good at and what you want and move you, directionally like in that space. And I think we do this a lot. We feel like things are important or they're things that we should be doing, but they don't really add value to the ultimate like life or goal or career that we really want to have.
Sam, you and I talk about this one topic a lot, that time is finite. We don't know when it ends, but it ends. And it's not infinite. Even though Simon Sinek has a great book called The Infinite Game, it really isn't. And so I started this part of the chapter that Scott wrote as well, because I've run across a lot of younger tenured leaders that are in it for the wrong reason. And they just think that their career is going to be long lasting. And I think it was several episodes, or maybe even more than a year ago, where we did a show and I was talking about how there were these two young people that I was coaching and mentoring at our former job. And they both were in the same exact job, but they were both very unhappy with what they were doing. And one chose to move on and one chose to stay. And it's a tragedy for people to chase the wrong goals or the wrong jobs or the wrong titles, or as Scott talks about as well, is, are you doing the job just because you're chasing money? And I have this current client that I'm working with, and he has just absorbed a part of a team that somebody else led because of reorgs. And the reason he's getting coaching as a very senior level executive that he's almost to the top of this particular company, is because his joy is being put out of balance because the people that are on this absorbed part of the team aren't in it to win it for the right reason. They're in it because they're salespeople. They make great compensation. All they have to do is a little bit of effort to get a really big return on their checks. And so it's really bothering him about the focus. And so we were talking about, well, what's something you could do right now to change that? Not what's something you can do in your next QBR, not something you can do in your second half of the year plans. What can you do right now? And that's what Scott in the book calls about the urgency trap, is that what are the things that you're focusing on right now that aren't the most important for you to get to this other thing? Because if you're losing joy because you're not good at something, you don't like it, maybe the culture's off at work, or you're just not feeling like what you're doing even matters anymore, but you're focusing on just what's in front of your calendar today, then that puts you on this autopilot of an end result where eventually you're going to get stuck. Because how many people have we talked with, Sam, that they're stuck because now they're in a job making a really good salary and they have benefits and they're afraid to leave it because the economy is not stable and they don't have other options. And so they're doing the least amount of effort. It's called, I think, quiet quitting, right? They're at work, not really working.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and that's that, we spend so much time, and it's interesting, like the thing I highlighted because it'll help me with where I help people, right? They said like mid-level employees average only about one 30-minute or greater interrupted time block about once every other day. Like we talk about, like we spend so much time on these urgent things, right? Something comes through, something happens, something's going on, and like we're not spending enough time on the deeper work. Those are the things that bring us joy, that make us happy, right? When I'm learning something, when I'm doing something, different, right? And he talks about like important tasks tend to be more difficult to complete than urgent ones, making us more reluctant to start them. Urgent tasks have a more immediate payoff. It's that instant gratification that's really driving it. And that's like the first time I'd ever thought about urgent tasks in that space, right? Like I'm a big like to-do list, checklist person. When I check something off the list, it feels really good, right? So it's like I'll sometimes will make the mistake of check, 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 check. And it's like, okay, now I've wasted half the day on stuff that like really wasn't it, right? It really wasn't the thing that I should have done. It was just urgent. It needed done now. I needed to respond right this second, but it didn't build into importance. It didn't build in that space, but it made me feel good, right? And that like that that I think is something I need to like ruminate on, meditate on a little bit about like, why am I doing this task, right? Is it making me feel good, or is it getting me towards the goals? Is it getting me towards the important thing that I want?
One of the ways that prevents us from doing that is not blocking time right in your day and week. So years ago, our mutual colleague and friend Michelle did this training class for us on something called switch tasking. Switch tasking is like multitasking, sort of, but it's where you go from a meeting to a meeting to a meeting to a meeting to a meeting. There's no breaks. Then your company says, let's just have 25-minute meetings so that you have time for a break. No, you barely have time to go to the bathroom. And in the 25-minute meeting, you probably needed a full hour to really dig deep into what you're talking about. And so just this week, I was in a series of full day workshops with no break except to move from like one conference room to another conference room. By the end of the day, I was like trying to look at all the notes of the things that I had taken notes on. And I was like, I don't even remember writing that particular thing. And so he talks about this and he says, when you think multitasking is good, rethink it. Because whether you're switch tasking or you're multitasking, there is psychology, there is research, there are factual studies that are done that say that you reduce your productivity or decrease your productivity by as much as 40, almost 50%. Secondly, when you multitask, you're least capable of doing anything successfully. I remember being in this conference room in another meeting one time where everybody had their laptops. And I was looking around the room because I'm old fashioned and I like to handwrite notes. So I refuse to bring my laptop unless I really have to be the one presenting. And I was looking around the room, Sam, and I was thinking, okay, you might be taking notes, but you're typing feverishly about whatever the person is saying, and you're typing while you're also listening. So that's the multitasking part. But I know that you who are typing right now are sitting next to me, emailing somebody else who's not even in this meeting. You're pulling up information about your next meeting. That's the switch tasking part.
Yep, that's exactly
that is not helpful to you. It's disrespectful to the meeting presenter and the participants that are there to be together. And I'll never forget one meeting I was in. This is probably years ago, but I remember it because this person was acting as if they were paying attention and taking notes. And the presenter said, Sam, what do you think about that? And the Sam was like, can you rephrase the question?
Can you repeat that for me?
Simple question. So if you're going to go to invest your minutes of your life that you can never get back, make sure you're going to meetings that matter and make sure that you are fully present because it matters to the other people that are in that room as well. So if there's even just one lesson I hope that I can share today, it's that stop wasting other people's time and stop wasting your own because life is too fragile. And if you really didn't need to be there, then have a proxy go in there for you. But if you really need to be there, be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that thing, right? Like if you really think about it and you sat through a meeting that you weren't really paying attention to, like what was the point, right? The meeting could have probably been a lot shorter or different or whatever. And this is where it's like, somebody's got to lead that. Somebody's got to be the person that says, what if we did this different, right? What if this was structured a little bit differently? What if we inserted breaks? What if the presentation was only 15 minutes, right? Reminds me of the book you gave me that I have recommended now to, I don't know how many people, but it's
15 minutes including Q&A.
It's like for anybody who's not read that book, but ever has to make a presentation or teach somebody how to make presentations. The book is super thin. You can get through it in like literally an afternoon and it will change the way you present forever. But the whole concept behind that is like you can do your entire presentation, including Q&A, in 15 minutes. And you really can. Like I've used it and done it, and I've recommended to other people to do it. And it's that kind of a thing of like, what are we doing here, right? Like how are we really spending our time? And this chapter, he does go through like an exercise, and I do like that he makes it really physical. Like, let's write our tasks out onto cards or paper or a spreadsheet or whatever works for you. And like, let's really look at it. And you kind of go through the same process that you did with your physical desk, with your digital stuff, of like just really evaluating, does it fit this criteria? Does it bring me joy, right? Those kinds of things. And so definitely worthwhile. Like if this is an area that you struggle with, which I think any adult running a busy life probably does, like this chapter is definitely worth reading. And the thing I loved too that he mentioned, like as he gets into this, and it was why like one of my really big takeaways was, instead of asking which activities you should eliminate, so you go through all this, you look at all the stuff that you do this, inventory, and you do an assessment on it. But instead of asking what to eliminate, ask what should be added, what should show up in your day. And it reminds me of that story where it's like you've got the big rocks, the little rocks, the pebbles, and the water. And it's like if you pour the water in first, you can't fit any of the other stuff in. Like if you pour the little rocks in before the big rocks, it doesn't fit. But if you pour in the big rocks, like the most important things, and then the medium rocks, and then the pebbles, and then the water, all of it can fit, right? Like you can fill it correctly and fit everything that you want in your life. And so when you're thinking about this kind of exercise, the question really isn't how do I get rid of stuff? Same thing with like a diet. Like, how do I stop eating this? It's like, how do I eat more fruits and vegetables? How do I eat more of the things? Because once you prioritize what you want, you don't have time or space or energy or stomach capacity for the junk.
Yeah. If you really maybe look at your calendar, if you're listening, look at your calendar this week and imagine that Friday is the last day that the world is here. It's possible. It's possible that in 5 minutes, your last day is here. You don't know. You don't know when the hourglass runs out, right? And you look at that and you think, are those things the big rocks? I used to actually teach that concept that you're talking about at AirTran when I worked there for all the new hires being onboarded, but we used golf balls. And so they would take these golf balls and write the things in their life that was the most important to them. You could use ping pong balls. You can look it up on YouTube. It's a really, really interesting team building exercise or onboarding exercise if you're bringing new people into your business, or call us and we'll help you do the exercise because it's so impactful when you see the things that we put in our jars of life that don't matter, and they take up all of your space. So when I got to the end of this chapter and he was talking about the different task pile and creating space on your calendar, I really thought about this idea of what if tomorrow wasn't promised? And maybe this will even get into a little bit of the next chapter next week, because you told me a story once, and I may not say it exactly right, so you'll have to fill in the blanks for me, but your grandmother had taught you something about like be where your shoes are, right? Like be
Yeah,
where
do
you
what your
are.
hands can find to do.
Okay, and tell a little bit about that before we run out of time today, because that's an impactful thing about really focusing on the time that is most important that's in front of you.
Yeah. And it like and that's really the idea of like well, she says two things that I think go hand in hand. It's this, it's the do what your hands find to do. Like sometimes you're like, I'm not sure what I should be doing. I don't know how to help with this person. Like when you're showing up in somebody's house and you're like, I know I need to help you in the kitchen or whatever, and I don't know what to do. And she always says, just do what your hands find to do. And so it's one of those things like if you're so aligned with you know what's important in your life, you know what the big levers are, what those golf balls are in your life, just do the things that align with that. Do what your hands find to do to make that really happen. And she means it in small spaces, right? Usually it's like helping around the house or like just helping somebody do something. But like it's the thing of like, what could I do right here that's, like if I assess and just help somebody in that space. But she also says like, protect your peace, find your peace. Like it's always about like that part of it. And I think it's the same concept of joy. Like joy and peace are two sides of a coin to me. And it's finding the things that are most important and making sure that you go just do them, right? Like put them in your space while find your joy and protect your peace and really pursue what that looks like.
And then go listen to our episodes on Solve for Happy.
Yeah, that's
That entire book was about the fact that here was a very successful executive, very successful executive. He's one of the senior most C-suite people at Google. So you can imagine, gigantic company, very successful, well-known company. He had the premier job, lots of money, loses his beloved son at 21 years old. And his schedule was always so jam-packed. And how many stories do we even see on Instagram or Facebook or wherever that talk about how there's the kid that comes up to the parent when they're little and is like, Mommy, Daddy, do you have time for me? No, 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 no. I'm busy right now. Or how many of you are listening to this right now and your kids have asked you for their attention while you're looking at your work emails or you're scrolling through your social media and you're not really listening? Vincent is very blunt with me when he knows I'm not paying attention to him. And he'll literally put his hands on my face and say, Mommy, look at me. And it's in those moments I feel the most guilt because he's the one I love the most versus the thing I'm doing that's taking me away from him. And in an instant, your kids grow up. My son is graduating from college this week, and I still see him like he's 5. So in the book, Scott talks about where, or I guess this part might be Marie, where she says, there's joy sparked at work, but when your schedule is so packed and you're physically and mentally exhausted, then it isn't joyful. And so if you are finding yourself going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, or you no longer are doing the tasks that bring you joyful activity, or you are in an environment where the culture just doesn't fit anymore, it's okay, because that's happening to a lot of people right now. But you can either do something or you can do nothing. I was coaching this lady this past week, and I'm going to reserve what we talked about for the next one, which is about the decisions, because I think it will segue great into that, because she was faced with having to make some really significant decisions by tidying those up. And that's what next week's episode will be about. So, Sam, anything else from you for today on this chapter on tidying time?
I think he ends this really well. He says, tidying your activities, tidying your time will give you a deeper sense of yourself and your true priorities. And I think that like at the fundamental core of what this book is about, this is about a deeper sense of yourself, your priorities, and what brings you joy. And by taking these actions, again, like we started this episode, I love this book because you could take this chapter by chapter. You could learn a little, do a little, learn a little, do a little. And by the end of it, if you know yourself better and find better joy in your everyday, like wouldn't that be worth your time? So I loved this chapter. I like absolutely am loving this book, and decisions are huge, and I can't wait to talk about them next time.
So, on that note, thank you all for listening. We will have the best we can, some show notes. We'll put even a link if we can remember, Sam. You might have to trigger my memory, but I'll try to remember as well to put the link to the Joey Asher book, because it's absolutely a book everybody should read if you want to capture your time back in having unproductive and boring meetings. So we'll add that. And then for this week, my name is Denise Russo, and on behalf of my friend Sam Powell, we really appreciate you joining us on this episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. And if it's been impactful for you, please share it with others. We're on Substack, WOYB, and we're working through some of our glitches as to why it's not showing up in other places. But if there are places where you prefer to listen to shows and you are not seeing that now, it would also help us if you let us know that. Okay, we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.